Pandemic is no excuse for New York City's rising tide of violent crime. Earlier this month, 4 New Yorkers were shot dead in 4 incidents with 24 hours, followed by a triple shooting in Times Square. This is a 1980s level crime, and the city is getting used to it with alarming alerts.
Alarcity.
No, it's not alarcity.
Alacrity.
Alacrity. Mayor Bill de Blasio answer to this is that there's not much we can do. Our entire lives were turned upside down, a global pandemic and a perfect storm, he says. So he hasn't acted with much urgency as the murder rate rose 47% last year to a total of 468 people killed, and has risen this year so far by 17%. This is just New York, is what we're talking about. The rest of the world is demonstrating the obvious. Murders and other crimes should be down during a pandemic, right? Look at the statistics here. So folks, if you're listening to this, New York is up, the rest of the world is down. In London, the murder rate fell 16% during the pandemic. In Italy, it dropped by 14%. In Japan, it dropped by 10%. In France, it dropped by 2%. And even in Mexico, it dropped by 0.5%. So what is wrong with us? Not just New York, but the country as a whole, with urban murder rates up 30% last year. One answer is that compared to Europe and Japan, we have more guns. That's been a crisis for decades. Yet, it isn't new. What is new in New York and the rest of the country is that we have effectively halted all preventative policing. We have also effectively stopped all incarceration of suspects in criminals short of murder. So what do you have to say to this article by New York Post?
What did it say? 478 homicides
468. 468 last year.
460.
Up by 47%.
Okay. So let me give you a number. In 1993, there were 2,200 murders in New York City. 2,200 in 1993, okay? There was no fucking pandemic. This ain't about a pandemic. This is about thugs being victimized. This is about an administration, de Blasio's administration, that has handcuffed the cops. He took $1 billion out of their budget. He took 600 plainclothes anti-crime cops off the streets. When you work in plainclothes, and I work plainclothes as a cop, okay? I'm not talking about narcotics. If you're in a plainclothes unit in New York City, your whole...
Can you explain what a plainclothes is to folks who don't know? What's plainclothes?
All right, let me give you an example. Times Square,
okay,
where we first met. The first time I ever met you was in Times Square.
Yep.
Taxis, yellow cabs. Everybody sees a yellow cab in Times Square. Well, let me tell you an old trick. I'll give you some old trivia. If you see a cab and the number on the cab in the middle letter was an R, and the last 2 numbers were the same, right, on that cab, the 3 people that's riding in that cab, usually there'll be a driver and 2 people in the back seat, those are cops, okay? They're in plain clothes, they're in yellow cabs, or they're in plain clothes, they're in unmarked cars.
When you say plain clothes, they're dressed like you.
They're dressed like
a normal
me.
guy.
Usually it's jeans, sneakers, a vest, you know, a jacket, whatever the case may be. They blend in, they look like anybody else, may have a beard, not beard, whatever. Bottom line, here's their job. Their whole function in life is to look for guns and respond to what we call hot jobs. Robbery in progress, shooting in progress, shots fired, somebody getting stabbed, whatever the case may be. Their job is violence. That's all their job is. Bill de Blasio took 600 of them, all the plainclothes units in New York City, took them off the street.
600 of them.
Why would he do something like that?
He put them back in uniform.
Why? What's the methodology?
He said they were a threat to the communities.
In what way?
I don't know. I don't.
What's the speculation, though? Even the speculation. What is the speculation? Why
my
he did that?
speculation is he's a moron. That's my speculation.
Very deep.
Okay.
He's got to have some justification for.
I don't care.
He's got to look at stats.
I don't care what his stats is. I don't care.
I don't know. I'm asking.
Well, because it's like it's almost like it's not fair. People should know you're a cop. You shouldn't be hiding like you're not a cop. Maybe that's what it is, like transparency.
Look, that's the whole point of being undercover and being plain clothes. So
here's the bottom line. He takes $1 billion out of the budget. He takes 600 cops out of the streets, plainclothes unit cops. Their whole function in life is to look for guns, takes them out, and basically opens up Rikers, lets people off Rikers, institutes these laws with the city council and the governor where they're not going to, all the things that Pat just talked about, right? You know, they're not locking them up, they're letting them out, they're not holding them for bail. all that stuff. So here's the bottom line. What'd you say the numbers last year? 660? 460?
468.
468. 2,200 in 1993, okay? Between 1993, I left office in 2002, January 2002. We dropped that homicide number from 2,200. I walked out of office, I think my number was 671. Under Mayor Bloomberg, we got it down to 371, 370, something like that. I had a 65% reduction in violent crime, a 70% reduction in homicide, and an 80% reduction in homicide in the black communities where the violence was the highest.
So what did you do during that time that they can be doing today? What were some of the strategies and tactics you guys used?
Everything they're not doing today.
Which is what?
Basically, I'd have plainclothes cops out there. If I was the police commissioner today, right, I would go to the mayor and say, I want the $1 billion back. I want 2 new classes of 2,000 each in class. I want 4,000 more cops than you have. I had 55,000 people that work for me in the NYPD. 41,000 of those were uniformed. Today, I think they're around 36,000. Why? You have a bigger population in New York City today than you did in 20 years ago. Right. Why do they have less cops working today? That's crazy. And keep this in mind. Here's what people in all those cities I mentioned earlier, whether it's Atlanta, Baltimore, these are gorgeous. Some of these are gorgeous cities, right? Nobody wants to live, visit, work, or go to school in a place where they're not safe. Nobody wants to move into a neighborhood where they got to put their kids to bed in bathtubs to protect them from gun violence. That's the bottom line. For every percentage point, Giuliani and I and the other commissioners, for every percentage point we reduced violence and homicide, I could show you increases in economic development, real estate value, and tourism. Every percentage point. It is the bottom line. You know, a lot of the advocates and these left-wing lunatics will jump on this totem pole saying, this is all socioeconomic. We need better jobs. We need better schools. We need whatever we need. They'll talk all this shit, right? Bottom line is, you're not getting none of that. You're not getting none. You're not getting better jobs. You're not getting better schools. As long as you have the highest violence and crime and the highest murder rate in your city, you're not getting none of that other stuff.
Why would somebody build a small business over there? What risk am I going to take with?
That's exactly right. Who's going to put a business there? Who's going to create jobs? You think Apple is going to put a flagship store on the south side of Chicago? No, they're not. The bottom line is you have to fix the violence and the murder rate.
So let me continue because, okay, so Benard, to be fair with the audience, you would consider yourself a Republican. You would say you're a Republican yourself. Yeah. Okay, so you're a Republican. New York Post is a center-right newspaper. A Post is New York Times is left, New York Post is right. Let's just so I just read to you stats from New York Post. So somebody may say, and USA Today is left, but New York Post is right.
USA Today tends to be
left.
center.
I'd say USA Today is center left. I think Wall Street Journal today is center right. Yeah, so New York Post is right. Now, next one, NPR. What is NPR? Far left.
Certainly left.
Far left, right? So this next story I'm reading to you is from NPR. Massive one-year rise in homicide rates collided with the pandemic in 2020. This is an NPR story, and they have a data. If you want to pull up that link right there so they can see it, open for visual data, Kai, pull it up so they can see it. At the end of 2020, Chicago police reported more than 750 murders. Okay, this is 2020 during the pandemic. A jump of more than 50% compared to 2019. People were out and about in 2019. People stayed home in 2020. How the hell is murders up 50% in Chicago from 2020 to 2019? By mid-December, LA saw a rise of 30% over the previous year with 322 homicides. There were 437 homicides in New York City by December 20th, nearly 40% higher than previous year. New Orleans-based data consultant Jeff Asher studied crime rates in more than 50 cities and says the crime spikes aren't just happening in big cities. With the numbers of homicides spiking in many places, Asher expects the final statistic for 2020 to tell a startling, grim story. We're going to see historically the largest one-year rise in murder that we've ever seen. Asher says it's been more than half a century since the country saw a year-to-year murder rate that jumped nearly 13%. This is NPR. This isn't New York Post. This isn't Wall Street Journal. This is NPR.
And here's your answer. The answer is this has nothing to do with the pandemic, in my opinion. This has to do with every one of those cities where I was talking about, Chicago included. You know, Chicago, you're not allowed to chase a bad guy. You know that, right? You know, the mayor of Chicago,
Muriel Bowser?
Yeah, says you can't. You have to get permission from a supervisor to run. We're not talking fucking car chases. We're talking about running after someone. You're not allowed to chase them unless you get a supervisor's permission. Okay? That's the kind of shit that is killing the police.
The hell does that even mean? What is your job?
Well, I don't know.
Guy's committing a crime. Can I get an approval? Let me get approval from the top of management. 10 minutes later, the guy's already committed a crime.
You can't chase him in a car. You can't chase him on foot. You can't confront him. There's no stop, question, and frisk. Nobody wants that anymore. Basically, they don't want you to do anything. That's the problem. That's the problem. This is not about a pandemic. This is about a change in the way we deal with the criminal element.
Well, here's what Bloomberg comes out. And Bloomberg, we know, is a left-wing side, but they're pretty reasonable. I think when it comes down to economics, they're center. I like to give Bloomberg's facts, but when it comes down to it, Bloomberg ran as a Democrat for office, and he's got a media empire. This is the story. New York City's violent crimes is up. So is the city's police budget. Would you consider Bloomberg a decent mayor for New York City?
He was.
He was. Okay, fair enough. So protests calling to defund the police have become a familiar sight in New York City. But this year, if Mayor de Blasio gets his way, one of America's most progressive cities will actually send more dollars to the NYPD than it did a year ago. This is a story from yesterday. Despite promises to strip $1 billion from city's law enforcement budget, which gained national attention in the wake of George Floyd's murder last year, de Blasio slashed less than half that as part of a broader round of pandemic cuts, and a spending plan for fiscal 2020 to announce this month keeps police headcount and operations intact, leaving any major shakeups of the force up to whoever succeeds the term limit mayor in January. But now, with shootings in March up 77% over last year. Let me say that one more time. Shootings in March of 2021 up 77% from last year, and an influx of more than $4 billion in federal stimulus funds available for mental health, at-risk youth, and other social programs. The notion of taking police officers off the streets has become less politically palatable for the mayor and the dozens or so candidates vying to replace him next year. New York is the largest police department in the U.S. and has amongst the highest number of officers per capita. There were 436 officers per 100,000 in the city in 2019 compared to 249 in L.A. or 233 in Houston, according to the FBI. So even de Blasio is sitting there saying, maybe I screwed up. What do you think?
Of course he screwed up, and they all know it. All you had to do was look at Minneapolis. Minneapolis is the first one that started this whole defunding mess, right? They wanted to defund it. They wanted to diminish. They wanted to annihilate the police department. They defunded to an extent. They also wanted to bring in social services instead of cops and all this nonsense, right? Well, last month or 2 months ago, they had to basically come out and say, okay, yeah, we screwed up. We gotta refund what we defunded. We need 200 immediate cops back on the street. We need ABC. The bottom line is defunding isn't going to work. I don't know what the mentality was behind defunding, but it's not going to work. Everything I predicted when Minneapolis started defunding, everything I've said, everything I predicted has come true. You defund, you diminish their budget, you take away staffing, you take away resources, and here's the absurd thing. You take away their training, right? So for the past 30 years, we've tried to train cops to do everything under the sun. You want de-escalation. You want verbal judo. You want less lethal force. You want to give them non-lethal force tools. Every single thing that we've tried to give them to make their job better, make them less confrontational, make it work easier in communities. Well, now we're going to defund it. We're going to take all that shit back. Really? It's absolutely insane. It makes no sense.
You know what I think about like a Soros? Imagine you're a cop working for the guy. What are you thinking? What are you thinking?
You're thinking they're morons.
No, but I'm actually like literally, yes, you're thinking they're morons, but what are you thinking? Are you sitting there saying, man, am I going to do a bang-up job for this guy? Like, imagine that relationship. Like, you know this guy cannot stand you. This guy wants to get rid of you, but he also knows he needs you. But at the same time with the media, he's kind of have to...
You're talking about the mayor right now?
No. I'm talking about...
Yeah,
I'm talking about...
Well, hold on.
Yeah.
Hold on. Think about this, though. The city council members, they have cops, they have drivers. Mm-hmm. The city officials, the mayor, he has a protective detail that's probably ranges somewhere around 25 people. Those cops that work for him despise him.
Really?
I know many of them. They despise him. They can't stand him. And they can't stand him because he's anti-cop, he's anti-PD, he hates them, he despises them.
How do they work together on a daily basis?
But they have a job to do.
Just imagine like you're working for a guy that hates you, hates what you stand for.
But on a personal level, do they not interact?
And think, you have the city council in New York City. They basically brutalize the NYPD on a daily basis. Brutalize them on a daily basis. How do you interact with them? You have a job to do. You go out and you do your job.
So if you enjoyed this little short segment from the podcast that we did, here's another short segment to watch. Or if you want to see the entire podcast, click over here. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.